What is going on, YouTube? Andrew Miller from Hook'emHeadlines.com coming back at you all today with another commitment breakdown. Texas got a big one today. Five-star wide receiver out of St. Louis University in Missouri, Ryan Wingo. Number 2 wide receiver in recruit in the nation in the 2024 class, and the number 5 recruit overall in the 24/7 Sports Composite. Nearly a consensus 5-star recruit, I believe there are. Anyway, this was a big one today. Texas gets their third 5-star commit in the 2024 class, I believe 19th commit overall, and their first since the last 5-star to commit to Texas in the 2024 class, which was Santa Ana Modern Day offensive tackle Brandon Baker, which was almost a month ago to this day. Texas got Wingo's commitment over Mizzou, Georgia, Texas A&M, Miami, and I believe Tennessee were his other finalist schools. But in reality, this was a battle between Texas and Mizzou. This was a really crazy recruiting battle down the stretch. Literally that went through decision day for Wingo, and I think this recruitment will continue. I don't think Mizzou is throwing in the towel anytime soon. This is a guy that they have gone all out for, one of their top priority recruits in their 24 class. They got Williams Winery, the 5-star defensive lineman, number 1 defensive line recruit in the nation in the 24/7 Sports Composite and then 24 class. And so, they have momentum on the field right now. Eli Drinkwitz and that Mizzou staff really want this guy. So, but for Texas, this is a huge get. Wingo was their top priority recruited wide receiver in the 24 class. And I think that, he's a guy that can come in and make an immediate impact. I'll get into his game and how he fits at Texas a little bit later, like I usually do in my commitment breakdowns. But I'll start with, kind of the journey to his commitment and what happened here today, because it was a pretty wild ride. Texas had the momentum in this recruitment early in the fall. Steve Wiltfong reported on 24/7 Sports actually today after Wingo committed to Texas that Wingo was a silent commitment to Texas coming out of his September 16th official visit to Texas for the Wyoming game. Had a spectacular visit. I know that went really well. His mom got to spend time with Steve Sarkisian, Chris Jackson, a lot of the Longhorns staff. He got to associate with some of the other Longhorns players and coaches and other recruits that were on campus. That was a pretty big visit weekend for Texas back in week 3 against Wyoming. But as things go in recruiting, sometimes the momentum can swing. And in this case, it did in Mizzou's favor after a couple of unofficial visits that Wingo took to Mizzou for 2 wins they had, one in Columbia and then one just up the road from him in St. Louis when they beat Memphis in, formerly that were Jones Dome. Don't know what it is called now. But anyway, Mizzou, with how good they've looked on the field, getting off to a 7-1 start this season, looking like one of the better teams in the SEC East. And then also the production of Luther Burden. He's less than 100 yards away from reaching 1,000 yards on the season, and we're not even at double-digit games yet for Mizzou. And so, Wingo mentioned Inside Texas. Justin Willis has mentioned this a lot, that production was a huge deal to him. And the way that Luther Burden, former 5-star recruit in and of himself, has looked this season, and how good Mizzou's offense has looked for a lot of the season. And obviously that was a point that really appealed to Wingo, to the point where it looked like Mizzou was going to be the pick until some reports started coming out today that Texas had started to regain some momentum in this recruitment, and that it was really going to come down to a close battle, that it was going to come down to the wire. I think Mizzou battled back a little bit, and then Texas was ultimately able to get his commitment this afternoon. He committed at his, I believe at his high school gym. We had posted the clip where he committed to Texas on the Twitter page, and we'll run some B-roll over this as we usually do to show that. But like I said, huge commitment for Texas. In the On3 industry ranking, Texas is now up to the number 9 class for the 2024 cycle in the nation. In 24/7 Sports Composite, they're a little bit lower. I believe 13th in the nation and 8th in the SEC right now. SEC, as always, is recruiting at a very high level this cycle. But Texas is getting a lot of their must-get recruits in the 24 class. I think that's one of the big storylines of this commitment for the Longhorns, is that not only did Chris Jackson get the job done, and I think his first real major recruiting battle as the Texas wide receivers coach since he came onto the staff early in the 2023 offseason, but also that Texas this is 3 straight guys now that are like top 5-star targets for Texas in the 24 class. You start with Colin Simmons, the 5-star Duncanville edge rusher on, I believe that was August 10th. You get him over LSU. He was, I still think, the biggest recruit for Texas this cycle. Then you have Brandon Baker, 5-star offensive tackle, number 1 offensive tackle recruit in the nation in the 24 class. You get him over schools like Nebraska, Ohio State, and Oregon. That was a huge win for Kyle Flood and the Longhorns on the recruiting trail. Both those guys are going to challenge to be immediate starters at Texas. And you get another one that can challenge for starting reps right away in Ryan Wingo, 5-star wide receiver. And so in the span of a couple of months, Texas has gotten 3 of their top guys. I think Dominic McKinley is really the only other like top 5-star target they had in the 24 class that they've missed on this fall. And, I still think they've got a decent defensive line class, and there's still more 5-stars out there that they're going after. The main one being Waco Connolly cornerback Kobe Black. So we'll get into what's next a little bit more later for Texas, so I won't talk about that too much yet. But I do think that's a major storyline with this recruitment for Texas, is that you really got a lot of good guys in this class, a lot of your top guys, before you head to the SEC in 2024. So Sark and the staff continue to lay the foundation in the right way on the recruiting trail, get this roster right heading into the future in the SEC. I'll talk a little bit more about the background of Wingo's recruitment, what drew him to Texas, his strengths, areas of improvement, and his projection and fit at Texas, as I always do. I mentioned it earlier, Wingo, a dang near consensus 5-star guy in the 24 class across all the major recruiting services. Number 5 recruit in the nation in the 24 class in the 24/7 Sports Composite. He was recruited by Chris Jackson, Tashard Choice, and Steve Sarkisian. He was really drawn to the Steve Sarkisian offense. He mentioned it after he committed that, his potential in this offense, how productive he could be, how many different ways Texas could get the ball in his hands, really, really appeals to him. And I think it was a huge factor, too, getting to play with Arch Manning. The potential for them to, just be tossing the ball around the yard for multiple years on the 40 is obviously very appealing to a lot of these top wide receiver recruits. And so, I got to think also that Xavier Worthy, Adonai Mitchell, the way these guys have played and performed this fall for Texas, they've been really, really consistent, solid guys in Big 12 play, came up huge in the Alabama game. Their success, I think, has played a big role in Wingo's recruitment too. Texas really started prioritizing Wingo during the summer. He had a June official visit where Arch Manning was actually believe like kind of the player that guided him throughout the weekend for his official visit, and that was definitely done on purpose so Sark could connect those guys early on, and the relationships just blossomed from there. But let's go and get into some of Wingo's strengths. Some of what his game looks like. So, I wrote this in my article today for the commitment breakdown. I'll link this in the description below, as always, if you want to get a little bit more detail on it. But, Wingo is a guy that just checks a lot of the boxes that you would want out of an elite wide receiver recruit. He does pretty much everything you would want a top wide receiver to do well. He's also got just elite upside. I think he's got potential 1st or 2nd round draft pick in the NFL, that type of upside. I think 24/7 Sports, their analysis, I think that was from Ivins, from Alan True, actually not Ivins, projected him as a 1st-round pick in the NFL draft in the future. So obviously high praise there from that analysis. But Wingo stands 6'2", 205, 210 pounds, depending on the weigh-in that you look at. 24/7 Sports has him at 205. I think he's someone that just screams able to make an immediate impact, get me the ball in whatever way you can. From a physical perspective, again, checks a lot of the boxes. Insane speed, good height. Again, 6'2", seen 6'2.5" before maybe can top out around 6'3". Good wingspan, excellent strength, and just overall, I think a very gifted athlete that he carries that 205-pound frame really, really well. Fluid runner, like I said, really good athlete. Great straight line speed, can make opposing defenders miss in a phone booth. So very elusive in the open field once you get him the ball. But the straight line speed, I'll mention this. He's a track guy. 10.55 100-meter dash, 21.3 about 200-meter dash, and dang near a 50-second 400-meter dash. So he has some of that long speed too. But anyway, that type of straight line speed combined with his acceleration, he can create some serious separation from opposing defensive backs. He really is just the total package as an athlete. And that translates to him becoming a very dangerous weapon that Texas can use in multiple ways. And that gets me into my next point here with his strengths is he's very versatile. You can line him up in multiple different spots pre-snap. 24/7 Sports said that he's not a player you want to box into a certain role because then you're really going to minimize a lot of his strengths and versatility. And I completely agree. Looking at his film and covering what I've seen from him throughout covering his recruitment is one of the reasons he's such a good fit with Sark's offense is because Sark's so good at layering those different concepts in and moving his best wide receivers around pre-snap, getting them out in space, finding different ways to create explosive plays for them and highlight their strengths. And obviously, Wingo really noticed that aspect of Sark's offense. He specifically said today after he committed that how Sark utilizes his receivers is just different. And I know I touched on a lot of areas of his game and, different kind of strengths he has as an athlete. And so, just how that translates, I think, like I said, he's a burner that has straight line speed, can create separation while running routes, and very explosive, can, come up with explosive plays after the catch with a lot of that elusiveness and straight line speed. The elusiveness, you make defenders miss in a phone booth. I'll put up, his huddle film and some of the other highlights I've seen from him that really caught my eye. It's just insane how shifty he can be and how quick he is when he's a tight window, tight space, whether it be on the boundary or working between the numbers. He can make it look very natural for him to make opposing defenders miss for how big of a wide receiver he is. And I mentioned this, but the large catch radius, I think he's a very easy target to throw to for the quarterback. Whether it is Malik Murphy, Arch Manning, getting him the football next year. Malik is a guy that does have a lot of power in his throws, and so having someone that can get open easily and you can find easily at multiple levels of the field that would make life easier on Malik. But for Arch, Wingo, you can get him the ball in so many ways. He can be so dangerous after the catch that it just gives Sark any number of ways to create big plays in this offense. Whether it be jet sweeps, screens, getting the ball over the top, or just even using Wingo as someone to. I mean, I'm not suggesting to use him as a decoy all the time. That just doesn't make the best use of his skill set. But it can't be overlooked that he is someone that could draw 2-3 guys in coverage and that can really create space for other playmakers elsewhere. So all around, he's just a complete matchup nightmare for opposing defensive coordinators. And like I said, there's just so many ways that you can get him the ball and he'll be a threat to make something big happen every time. And again, to sum up some of what I was saying earlier, I just think that Wingo has excellent hands, very reliable receiver. You're not going to see a ton of drops from him. Someone that can also go up and get those tough contested 50-50 balls. I mentioned that a second ago. You can use him on the boundary, or even if it's, even if he's working in the short and intermediate passing game between the numbers, if he throws a little bit high, he's got excellent verticality, and again, large catch radius. So there's not a whole lot of spots you can miss with him. Giving him a catchable ball, it, like I said, just makes life easier on the quarterback. There's a lot of ways that you can talk about Wingo's strengths on offense, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention how he threatens opposing teams on special teams as a returner. A lot of the attributes I've mentioned already, the speed, just how elusive he is in the open field, his field vision, that all kind of bakes into him being a dangerous returner as well. I think he takes on the punting duties for St. Louis University, so he's got experience in multiple aspects of special teams. But I think he'd definitely be a special teams contributor at Texas. But he's a guy that's got well over 600 return yards since his sophomore campaign in high school, and multiple return touchdowns too. So he's very dangerous in that regard. But yeah, let's go ahead and talk about some of the areas of improvement for him. this isn't a very long segment for this video, just because, again, when you have someone that is a immediate impact elite receiver that's a top 5 rated recruit in the nation in the 2024 class in the 24/7 Sports Composite, there's usually not a ton of development that still needs to be had for that player, for that prospect. But the two areas I did pinpoint, for one, downfield blocking, run blocking. I haven't seen a ton from Wingo there. I don't necessarily know if that's a weakness in his game, but there's just not a ton of exposure that he has in that regard on film. And so, that's something that could potentially need to be polished, or maybe he just needs more experience in. And then the other thing is, he just doesn't, this is probably the biggest thing, is going to be the jump in competition. He plays Missouri 5A football right now, and more often than not, he's the best player on the football field in every game he plays. I think it's going to be a significant jump in competition for him to go from, playing some subpar opposition in Missouri high school football to competing in the SEC next year. This kind of segues me pretty well into my next point, but, he's going to be competing for playing time, competing for reps, I think, right away next year. Texas is set to lose, very likely going to lose Jordan Whittington, Adonai Mitchell, and Xavier Worthy, their 3 starting receivers, next offseason. And that'll give guys like Jonte Cook, Ryan Wingo, DeAndre Moore, Ryan Niblett, if Parker Livingston or Freddie DeBose makes a big jump next year, there's any multitude of guys, Isaiah Nayor maybe, that could all compete for starting reps next year. That doesn't mention the Texas, what Texas can find in the portal next offseason. And so, for Wingo, I think he checks so many boxes that he's just someone that is going to be capable of making immediate impact at Texas. Maybe not to the same extent, but just because Worthy was so good as a freshman, you don't see that very often, that player having that big of a freshman campaign. But Wingo has the type of talent to have the impact that Worthy had in 2021 at Texas when he was a freshman All-American. Just a really, really explosive, dangerous playmaker for Texas, whether it was special teams or on offense. There's just so many ways that Wingo can fit in the offense too. I think he could start at field receiver, start at the boundary. Again, I mentioned it earlier, you just don't want to box him into one role. And so, maybe Cook, I think Jonte Cook is the logical next man up to replace Worthy at the field spot. And so, potentially that could bump Wingo over to the boundary. Because again, he can get over the top. You can utilize his speed here, still motion him around, since he's not set at the line of scrimmage. And so, I still think that taking up double teams, getting over the top, getting out in space, maybe, motioning around, getting involved in the screen game is still a very effective way for Wingo to be involved in the offense right away. Overall, he's just someone that's going to be an immediate impact player, potential first-year starter. Texas is getting a lot of those guys. I think all 3, I mentioned this earlier, but all 3 5-star commits in the 24 class could be immediate starters for Texas. Brandon Baker at offensive tackle, Colin Simmons at edge, definitely, and Wingo at wide receiver. Sark and the staff are doing great work on the recruiting trail right now. I expect that to continue this fall. The commits aren't coming in large swaths right now because Texas got most of their scholarship spots in the 24 class, at least from the high school ranks, filled up during the summer. Most of the commitments were coming, during official visit season or a little bit thereafter. But Texas has 19 commits now. They're still looking to fill a few more spots in this class. I think defensive line, they're still looking for another guy. Alex Foster, 3-star Baylor commit. I know that they've offered a few other guys along the defensive line. They're still in contact with Dominic McKinley, but I think hanging on to DeAndre Robinson, the 4-star defensive line commit out of Florida, keeping him away from the Gators is something big of note. And then they're also re-engaging. I mentioned this on the site this week. They've re-engaged with 4-star Auburn defensive line commit out of IMG Academy, TJ Lindsey. He was someone that Texas was in on during the summer. They were recruiting him pretty hard. He took an official visit to Texas, but Texas ended up finishing in second when he committed to Auburn in mid-August, so a couple of months ago. But he's been receptive, potentially taking a visit if he does end up on the 40 acres here in the next couple of home games against BYU and then Kansas State next weekend. Then I think things get pretty real in that recruitment. Otherwise, Texas will probably be looking elsewhere. And And then, in the defensive backfield, that's a big need for Texas right now. The safety play hasn't been great this season. They're losing a couple guys back there during the offseason. Jalen Catalon, Jaron Thompson, both seniors. I think they'll be gone next year. You got Derek Williams, but beyond that, there's not like a logical next man up. And, you got to fill those spots. And Texas looking at guys like Corian Gibson, 4-star Clemson commit. I don't know how realistic it is to flip him. He seems pretty locked in with Clemson, but they're still in contact there. Texas, one of their recent offers is to 5-star Florida commit Xavier Filsame from McKinney High School in the DFW Metroplex. I wish Texas had offered him a little bit earlier. I think they got in a little bit late in that recruitment, but Texas, Georgia still trying to flip him from Florida. Obviously, that would be a massive deal if Texas could get that done. But for anything to happen there, you got to see Texas getting him on campus here again, probably in the next couple of weeks. So we'll monitor that. But Texas again still trying to chip away there. And then again in the defensive backfield, the must-get recruit at this point is 5-star Waco Connolly cornerback Kobe Black. Reported by On3 today that Kobe Black's nearing a decision, and I believe that at this point. I think that I do think he's probably winding down the recruiting process. He canceled quite a few visits. LSU, Texas A&M most recently, that he had scheduled official visits, didn't end up making it. Potentially could get on campus at Texas here soon. I know he spent a lot of time at Oklahoma State. His brother Corey Black is starting cornerback for the Pokes. I know that, watching his brother play, big deal to him, followed his recruiting process very close, learned a lot from that. And I think that plays a big role in how Kobe Black's been so patient so far. But not necessarily saying that Oklahoma State's a threat for Kobe Black. I don't think that's the case. But, I think Texas has a pretty firm lead there. And, they look good to get him as their 4th 5-star commit in the 24 class a couple of months before signing day in mid-December. And then, Texas, I assume that they're still looking to fill a spot along the offensive line. I not assume that I do know. 4-star Auburn commit DeAndre Carter is kind of the main guy there right now. There's a few other outstanding targets, but Carter, someone that came in for an official visit late September, I believe for the Kansas game, and Texas giving him something to think about right now. I know that I believe word's coming in any day now what the status is with him if he's actually going to flip, but he's an important guy for Auburn just because he is their only offensive line commit in the 24 class. Hugh Freeze trying to rebuild that offensive line, that entire offense, and I think DeAndre Carter is a pretty important piece to the puzzle for them. And then, wide receivers probably set at this point. Texas might still try to look in the portal. Same thing at tight end, but I think for high school recruiting, they're pretty much done there. That said, you're going to have to still continue to recruit Wingo through the finish line on signing day because Mizzou's not going to give up, and I don't think other teams are here either. Tennessee was recruiting him pretty hard. I know Georgia at one point was considered a leader in this recruitment. Texas A&M was trying to jump in here, but was trying to make a push pretty late. But I think Mizzou, especially if they continue to have success on the field this fall, we'll see how Texas finishes out the season. They're looking good right now, obviously, but they got to still finish out strong. Wingo is going to be still a hotly contested recruitment for the next couple of months. Outside of that, quarterback set Trey Owens in the 24 class, high 3-star that's committed out of Cypress Cy-Fair, and then you got KJ Lacey, high 4-star quarterback out of Sarah Landon, Alabama in the 25 class. I think a lot of the attention now turns to portal recruiting for the offseason, and then the 25 class, because Texas has one commit there right now, and I think you're going to see a more patient process taken with the 25 class too, like Sark and the Longhorn staff did with the 24 class. A lot of these guys committed again during the summer or during the fall. Sark and the staff, they play the long game, very patient with it. And actually, I forgot one thing. Speaking of the long game, two of the other top targets right now for Texas in the 24 class are 4-star Texas A&M linebacker commit out of Jasper, Ty Anthony Smith, and then I guess at this point the home run or the potential home run grand slam target that Texas is going after at linebacker right now, number 1 linebacker recruit in the nation in the 24 class, according to every major recruiting service, Justin Williams, 5-star Georgia commit. Justin Williams is obviously just an absolute animal out there. Texas, even though he is in state, I believe he's not. I believe he's from the Midwest, and so he doesn't have a ton of ties around Texas, but You know, Texas, they're in communication with them. I got something coming up on the site either tonight or tomorrow about Texas kind of re-engaging there. Some reports that I've sifted through on that, and it seems like, you know, Texas pushing for a visit. Williams is hearing them out there, so there's potentially some life there for Texas in that recruitment. But anyway, those are some of the names to watch moving forward. But, you know, this is definitely a day to celebrate for Texas on the recruiting trail. Huge win to get Wingo over Mizzou. It seemed like just a couple of days ago that Texas was going to have to look in some other directions to fill another wide receiver spot in this class, but ended up winning this recruitment when it was all said and done. But again, there's still some ways to go for this. But anyway, for Andrew Miller at Hook'emHeadlines.com, that's pretty much it. Hook 'em.